Good afternoon, all. We will start the session at 3 p.m. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon. ED sir joined. Let's check. I think he has joined.
Yes, sir. ED sir have joined.
And about Dr. Vatsas, well, let me find out. And check with Mr. V.S. Prakash also.
Sir, Dr. V.S. Prakash is joining soon. He is logging. Dr. V.S. Prakash has also joined. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. Professor Santosh, good afternoon.
Very good afternoon. Dr. Vats is also joining shortly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Don't grow beard.
Oh, sorry. Huh?
You have to manage drought. Ali, it seems ET has joined already.
Yes, sir. ED sir have already joined.
एक बार ऑडियो चेक करा लेते हैं.
Yes, sir.
Naseem, are you there? Naseem ji.
हाँ सर, गुड आफ्टरनून.
Very good afternoon.
कैसे हैं आप?
बढ़िया, आप बताइए सब ठीक है?
बस सब ठीक चल रहा है. अभी तो बारिश चल रही है.
अभी बारिश चल रही है, अभी ड्राउट का मौसम नहीं है.
हाँ. मुझे बहुत खुशी हो रही कि आज मैं आपके साथ कुछ बात करने के लिए आपने मुझे स्पेस दिया.
हाँ, कम्युनिटी पे आप बताएंगी ना कि कम्युनिटी पे किस तरह से ड्राउट मैनेजमेंट पे
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
आपने
मेरे
इनिशिएटिव
साथ
लिया.
और गोदावरी जी भी है सर.
हाँ, तो दोनों मिलके आप बताएंगे. महाराष्ट्र का पूरा ड्राउट प्रोन वहाँ पे है और
जी.
कम्युनिटी किस तरह से सामने आई इसको दूर करने के लिए.
हाँ सर.
ठीक है. आप हिंदी में बोलेंगे, अंग्रेजी में बोलेंगे? दोनों में अच्छा रहेगा, किसी में बोले.
हिंदी में बताऊं या आप क्या बोल रहे थे?
नहीं, आप बताइए. हिंदी में कोई इशू नहीं है. हम लोग कभी दिक्कत होगी
हाँ.
किसी स्टूडेंट्स को तो
ठीक
हम
है.
लोग उसको ट्रांसलेट कर देंगे.
ठीक है, ठीक चलेगा.
हाँ वत्स जी. अली जरा देखें म्यूट. उनको आप राइट देना, खुद से वो म्यूट कर सके और खुद से अनम्यूट कर सके. अली
Sir, he has the right. He
अभी
is
दे दीजिए.
in panelist list. Let me check, sir.
आई कांट सी यू. आपका वो आया नहीं इसमें.
Yes, sir. Now he is in the panelist list, sir.
अब आप क्लिक कीजिए, वीडियो ऑन कीजिए डॉक्टर वत्स, है ना? ठीक 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 ठीक.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, very much. I can see you also.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let me know whenever you are ready.
Good afternoon, Dr. Vats. Namaste. The ED and NIDM, sir.
What's you have to unmute yourself. Idiot
Sir,
night
good
is
afternoon.
greeting you.
Okay. Sorry. Did you? Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
Okay.
can, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So nice.
Thank you,
So
sir.
nice.
So Ali, see this and we can start now because everybody has joined, all the panelists.
Yes, sir.
And,
Dr. Akash
just
and
check that.
Santa will also join shortly. So,
So,
should we
meanwhile,
start, sir?
Yes, because
Thank you, sir.
participants have joined already. 40 delegates are there, so you may start.
Yes. Thank you, sir. So, a very good afternoon to all the respected dignitaries, esteemed panelists, participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of National Institute of Disaster Management, I extend you all a very warm welcome to this webinar session on community resilience to droughts. In general, a drought may be defined as an extended period, a season, a year, or several years of deficient precipitation compared to the statistical multi-year average for a region that results in water shortage for some activity, group, or environmental sector. While this is a general definition, drought can be classified broadly into 4 categories. First one is the meteorological droughts that occur when there are long gaps in normal rainfall and duration of the dry period increases. The other one is the agricultural droughts. It occurs when there is insufficient soil moisture to meet the needs of a crop at a particular time. It is usually followed by meteorological drought. Hydrological drought are the results of surface and subsurface water supplies from streams, rivers, and lakes becoming scarce due to the scanty rainfall. The last one is the socio-economic droughts. They occurs when water shortage starts to affect people's lives individually or collectively. The impact of droughts on community could be very severe, and it can lead to issues of food security, malnutrition, life security, psychosocial trauma, reduced incomes, migration, etc. So this webinar aims to find out the ways of developing a drought resilient community, the roles of community and community institutions in drought risk reduction, and how the social vulnerability is related to droughts. With this, now I take this auspicious opportunity to welcome and introduce the patron of this webinar session, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, Vishesh Seva Medal, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management. Welcome, sir. I would also like to welcome and introduce the convener of this webinar, Professor Santosh Kumar, who is the faculty and head Governance, Policy, Planning and Inclusive DRR at National Institute of Disaster Management. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I take the immense pleasure to welcome and introduce the Honorable Member of National Disaster Management Authority, Dr. Krishna Vats. Dr. Krishna Vats has worked in the area of disaster risk reduction and recovery for the last 25 years. Prior to joining as the Honorable Member of National Disaster Management Authority, Dr. Vats worked as Policy Advisor, Disaster Recovery, Bureau of Policy and Program Support, UNDP, in New York and Nairobi during 2015 to 20. He served as a Regional Disaster Reduction Advisor, South and Southwest Asia in New Delhi. He joined UNDP in 2007 as Early Recovery Coordinator in the Philippines. As a career civil servant, Dr. Vats joined the Maharashtra Emergency Earthquake Rehabilitation Program in the state of Maharashtra in 1995 and implemented a large-scale earthquake recovery program during the next 4 years. He has also served as Secretary of the Government of Maharashtra Relief and Rehabilitation, and then as Secretary Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. In course of his career, he extensively consulted for several national and international organizations in the area of disaster risk reduction and recovery. Dr. Vats has a doctorate of science in disaster risk management from the George Washington University, Washington, D.C., and published extensively on the subject. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
We also have an eminent set of panelists and experts today to provide the insight of the subject matter. The speakers include Dr. Akash Sondhi, Assistant Professor at Terry School of Advanced Studies. Dr. Akash has more than 10 years of academic experience with the focus areas comprising rural resilience, climate change adaptation, water security, nutrition security, and sustainable livelihood. He has a doctorate in environmental engineering. He will be joining us shortly. We also have Ms. Ranjana Chaudhary. She is also a faculty in the Department of Regional Water Studies at the Terry School of Advanced Studies, New Delhi. She is a water professional with 25 plus years of experience in civil engineering project, teaching and training. Her area of expertise is broadly in urban water management, including design of water and wastewater schemes, design of decentralized facilities, water budget modeling, etc. She will also join us shortly. We have with us Dr. V.S. Prakash, who is a member of Technical Committee, Karnataka State Tanks Conservation and Development Authority. Formerly, he has served in various capacities in Government of India and also in Government of Karnataka since 1973. Formerly, he was the advisor and registrar at the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore. He was also the founder special director of the Karnataka State Natural Disaster Monitoring Center. He has also served as a director of Karnataka State Remote Sensing Application Center, as a director of Drought Monitoring Karnataka. And Government of India. He was also the scientist at Central Groundwater Board, Ministry of Water Resources, Government of India. Welcome, sir. We also have with Miss Naseem Sheikh. She is the Associate Director Programs at Swen Shikshan Prayog, Maharashtra. Ms. Naseem Sheikh is an expert with over 2 decades of experience in organizing rural grassroots women to build their economic, social, and political competencies and move from the margin to the mainstream. She organized women farmers in an agriculture group to shift climate resilience, create food secure agriculture, reduce the climate risk, and to improve the agriculture economy and food in the community, working hard to access cultivation and land rights of women. Welcome, ma'am. So now may I request Professor Santosh Kumar to please deliver his welcome and special address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ali, and Dr. Vatsa, Krishna Vatsa, the honorable member of the National Disaster Management Authority, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, Executive Director of NIDM, V.S. Prakash, Naseem Sheikh, and other 2 panelists who have to join Dr. Akash and the Madam Ranjana. She will be there in a short while. This is an important webinar which we had thoughts of, like how we can go for the drought and the time of flooding. The flooding is going on all over in the country, but the UNCTAD report of 2021 is saying that most of the disasters which are happening across the globe, and out of that 60% of the damage is being caused by this drought. So that made us to think the drought is one disaster which is prolonging for long, and many new states have come up in the kind of as a drought-prone states. Earlier, India had just 6-7 states, but now even the state like Bihar, which has a largely flood-prone, it is known as a flood-prone state, but also half of the districts of Bihar, more than 15 or 20 districts of Bihar are reeling under the drought. So new phenomena is coming up in terms of a whole discourse of disaster management. One is that sudden and loud, but others are also what we are saying as a kind of a silent killer, as a disaster. Drought is a killer. And then states, when we're talking about, that's all states, as Maharashtra itself is a big state, Andhra is a big state, Karnataka is a big state, Bihar is a big state in terms of also population, Rajasthan or Gujarat, all these states are facing drought. And many of the states are also facing that suicidal cases because of the distress, economic distress leading to migration, leading to kind of different challenges. I will not be speaking much. I wish to listen from our experts and the chief guest, because the chief guest has a special kind of understanding of drought in terms of one as handling as a relief commissioner, handling as a collector, and also handling as an secretary revenue and disaster management in the state. So and always we keep telling about that disaster management is the state subject. And when it comes to that, now he's holding the position at the National Disaster Management Authority after having this international UNDP and the regional advisor and so on and so forth. And so how his insights are coming so that when we talk about the community, and Honorable Prime Minister's 10-point agenda is also talking about empowering local government and the community. So how, and many of the examples which we have in India, because this is the oldest disaster which we have recognized, history of entire relief manual started with the drought management. When the British government was there, colonial government was there, we had this every state relief manual. Relief manual came for drought management and drought here. And Ministry of Agriculture, nodally, which is looking after this entire drought management. And National Disaster Authority also brought in national guidelines on the drought management. And many of the recommendations were given by the National Disaster Management. One of the setting of the drought monitoring centers at most of the states with the help of the state disaster authorities. And one of the states that Karnataka is a very proactive state in this context, that they set up this drought monitoring and on a daily basis, that rainfall, moisture, and other things, and so that these advisories are being issued to the people. National Institute of Disaster Management itself got engaged with the Ministry of Agriculture and developed subsequently, and Dr. Vatsa was there in the when we were drafting the first manual for Ministry of Agriculture on drought. So we are very grateful to Dr. Vatsa, because you have been into this drought management and also helping NIDM and the Government of India in preparing the drought manual. And there, on the other hand, when V.S. Prakash, when we are talking about, he was also there while preparing the guidelines. So looking at these all three, that agricultural drought, then with a hydrological drought, and then meteorological drought, combining together is leading to the socioeconomic distress. So in this context, how community can actually be, and what are the tools which can be given to the community so that community are empowered to take this in many fronts. Example from Maharashtra, example from Karnataka, and from many other parts of the world. How community engage themselves in bringing the watershed management, or because this is a multi-sectoral kind of a subject where different sectors, forestry has a role to play, the land use department has a role to play, irrigation department has a role to play, agriculture department has to play. So multi-sectoral challenges, and how we are showing that climate change, which is looming large, where we are saying that hydrometeorological disaster will be very high, like drought and the floods and the cyclonic storms. So in this context, threefold objectives which we had, that to understand that community's behavior and community empowerment tools for drought management. The second very important thing, at what are the science and technology which actually help in disaster risk management to the community, and then financial tools which can help in the context of a finance commission, that how that 15th Finance Commission is empowering community in building resilience towards that. Only this much I had to say, and once again take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Vatsa. I welcome General Bindal, V.S. Prakash, Naseem Seth, Mr. Akash Shondi, and also Ms. Ranjana Chaudhary, along with all the participants who have joined. More than 210 participants have joined so far from all over the country, along with my team, who's working with Mr. Ali Haider. I welcome once again to all of you, all the dignitaries, and also the participants for the deliberations. Now I would request General Bindal to address, give the keynote address, and then subsequently we will invite Dr. Krishna Vatsa for giving inaugural address. Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal.
Thank you, Professor Santosh Kumar. It's a very interesting topic that is being discussed today. And generally, this topic is not discussed as far as disaster management is concerned to that extent because it's a slow disaster, creeping disaster, which comes uh, and it is not seen by anyone in the country because it is not reported much. It is only felt by people who are actually undergoing it. So it's very important that such issues must be discussed at national platform so that the awareness is created and we bring out the right lessons and maybe help in some policy advocacy. So we are very, very fortunate that today Dr. Krishna Vatsa is here, member NDMA, who has worked in this field for so long. Dr. V.S. Prakash is there, Dr. Ranjana Chaudhary is there, and we have someone who's a practitioner on ground, Naseem Sheikh is there. So Dr. Akash Shondi is there. So it's a very good mix of panelists who have come together to discuss on such an important issue. And we will be looking for a lot of guidance from the panelists to make out the report because this is a topic which I said is being discussed or worked upon in respective silos of the ministries. And maybe there is a need to have a more holistic approach for the whole subject. Coming down to the topic per se, we already, Mr. Ali Haider has explained what is a drought and what are the types of drought. But I'll talk about the analysis in India, which shows that last 2 centuries uh, has shown that number of incidences of drought has not increased, but the severity has increased by quite a lot. And hence, it's a matter of concern. And it is a product of regions' risk of water shortage and exposure of the communities to the problems arising thereafter. So, if nations and regions are to make progress in reducing the serious consequences of drought, they must improve their understanding of the hazard and the factors that influence vulnerability. So it is critical that countries better understand this hazard and how it varies temporally and spatially to establish comprehensive and integrated drought early warning systems that incorporate climate, soil, and water supply functions such as precipitation, temperature, soil moisture, snowpack, reservoir and lake levels, groundwater levels, and stream flow. So it's a combination of many such failures which leads to a drought. But why does it occur in India and so frequently? There are many factors to that. Even though we have a high average of annual rainfall, and it is one of the highest in among all the countries in the world, but there is a considerable annual variation. We have about 73% average annual rainfall is about 1150 millimeters. Uh, Out of that, about 73% is received in less than 100 days during the southwest monsoon, and the geographical spread is also very uneven. So even though we receive abundant rain as a whole, disparity in its distribution over different parts of the country is so great that some parts suffer from perennial dryness, which leads to drought. And in other parts, however, the rainfall is so excessive that only a fraction can be utilized and rest is washed away to the sea. So the variability in rainfall as compared to the long period average, which is also called as LPA, it exceeds 30% in large areas of the country and is over 40 to 50% in parts of drought-prone Saurashtra, Kutch, Rajasthan, Assam, which were referred to by Professor Santosh Kumar. And inadequacy of rains coupled with adverse land-man ratio compels the farmers to practice rain-fed agriculture in large parts of the country. And irrigation using groundwater aggravates the situation in the long term, as groundwater withdrawal exceeds the replenishment from the rainwater. In the peninsular region, the availability of surface water itself becomes scarce in the years of rainfall insufficiency. We have seen what happened in Chennai last year, in 2019, when people were queuing up for the water tankers to fill up the buckets. So the per capita water availability in the country is steadily declining, and traditional water harvesting systems have been largely abandoned. So there are many other reasons or challenges, I'll say, uh, like the primary responsibility of managing the drought is that of the respective state governments. The criteria followed for drought declaration and the time when the drought is declared is differs across the states, and there is no time limit for declaration of droughts by the states. So many a times the interventions are also delayed or are untimely, and involvement of various ministries, departments, organizations in one or the other short-term or long-term activities of drought management results in delay in effective and timely coordination. And the indicators used and the methodology followed for drought intensity assessment and drought monitoring, it differs largely from state to state. So slow setting in of drought makes it difficult to determine the onset and end of the drought. And so the data required for drought assessment and drought declaration are available, but in a very scattered manner with different organizations and in local formats. So making it cumbersome for quick analysis and decision making. Also, the challenge that we face is availability of key data used for drought intensity assessment, such as rainfall, crop sown areas, reservoir levels differ from state to state. The procedure for data collection and database maintenance vary across the various states. So this leads to insufficient use of information and communication technology tools by various agencies in the management of drought. And hence we see the success and failures in various areas. Then traditional rainwater harvesting measures like check dams in the rain-fed areas, uh, there is a lack of it, which results in inadequate storage water in times of need or drought. The lack of community participation in drought management activities at the village or tehsil level and the low levels of involvement of self-help groups, NGOs, and the corporate sector in drought management all further reduces the overall value of the whole effort. So monitoring systems like we have early warning systems are with various agencies like IMD, Agriculture Meteorology Division, Drought Research Unit, National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, Central Arid Zone Research Institute, Ministry of Earth Sciences, and National Agricultural Drought Assessment and Monitoring System. So getting them together on a common dashboard for a common protocol is a very big challenge. So the checklist is quite a large checklist. Uh, the states which declare area drought prone, keeping in mind the drought indicators such as rainfall, storage level in reservoirs, surface and groundwater level, sowing and crop conditions. So they all require to be studied scientifically, and the academia and the researchers uh, need to be taken on board and given a chance to participate in such decision making, which is a very important factor if we want to have a long term implementation of drought mitigation measures. Then such measures as water harvesting and conservation, artificial recharge of groundwater should be thought of, improved water saving farm practices which should be developed and disseminated, and incentives given, long-term irrigation management, afforestation, crop insurance, which is already there to some extent, community participation in the mitigation, climate variability and adaptation, adapting to the climate change also. All these are required to be brought together and thought of. The capacity building, which is being done by national training and capacity building programs, training in drought management, training of trainers, strengthening of administrative training institutes, training of professionals, government officials, educators. It's all an important part of the whole cycle of drought management. So with this, I will finish here because I'm keen to hear the eminent panelists who will be coming after me and who are expert in this field to learn from them. And I'll request the participants to ask their doubts through the chat box. Thank you, and back to you, Professor Santosh Kumar.
Thank you, thank you, General Bindal, for giving insights and also raising issues related to data, relating to monitoring, relating to water management, recharging, deforestation, and many other dimensions of this management of drought at this community level. At this juncture, these points, which are and the multi-sectoral nature of the drought management, it's very important to hear what the issues which are being flagged. And as an administrator and also as a policy planner, Dr. Vatsa is also a professional in disaster risk management, and seeing the drought as a kind of his passion. And so I would request now Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Krishna Vatsa, to address these issues, that seeing that how challenges which have been flagged and you have seen personally at the national level and also at the state level and also at the global level. So what are your your key recommendations would be in your address, where the community can be empowered with what kind of a tool? And especially I would request you to kindly, I am sure that you must have thought of also a 15th Finance Commission where you have been engaged very, very thoroughly, how that will help the community empowerment process when it comes to the drought management. Dr. Vatsa, please. For your inaugural address, please.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So thank you, Professor Santosh Kumar, and thank you, Major General Bindal. Thank you, NIDM, for inviting me. It's a very, very important issue, and it's very timely. It has several dimensions. I don't know if it would be possible to do justice in a short period of 15 minutes, but I will try. This year, our agricultural production has touched about 300 million tons, and if you see the last 4 or 5 years, our agricultural production has been quite impressive. We have been growing at the rate of 4 to 5%. 2014-15 or 2015-16, perhaps our agricultural production was around 250 million tons. So we have really increased our agricultural production during the last 5 years, and it has really maintained its increasing trajectory. Now, in the midst of this agricultural growth, we have certain amount of agrarian distress or rural distress, which gets reflected in phenomena like farmer suicides. So this is really a very difficult kind of a tricky question, and how do we understand this rural distress in the midst of the growing agricultural production? And it could very well be explained in terms of the plight, the difficulty, or the distress which the small and marginal farmers face. It's also a problem of rain-fed farming, and a large number of farmers engaged in rain-fed farming today are very vulnerable. And the climate change and variability has also contributed to this problem, where the droughts are becoming more frequent, and at the same time, the droughts are also being experienced across the country. So, so a series of factors come together to constitute or to explain the extent and the magnitude of rural distress. So let's look at the drought, the spread of drought more carefully. Today we have about 68% of the country, of the country's area prone to drought. And almost 33% of the country has a serious drought problem, chronic drought problem. So, if you look at these statistics in terms of districts, about 225 districts are drought prone, and little more than 100 districts are chronically affected by droughts. So it is a very very extensive problem so far as the geography is concerned. If you look at the frequency of drought, almost every 3 years we have a drought, and every 8-9 years we have a severe drought. So its drought is becoming more frequent, largely due to the ENSO impact, the El Nino impact, and also due to this the climate change impact, where we have a very high level of climate variability, in the sense that a large amount of rainfall happens in a fewer number of days. So if you look at this year also, the monsoon perhaps started a little early. June we had, I think we had good rainfall in the early part of June, but then the monsoon weakened for a long time. And then again in July, the monsoon picked up, and we have a huge amount of rainfall and flooding in different parts of areas. So if you look at the behavior of the monsoon this year, you would see how the intra-seasonal variability plays out, which actually aggravates both the problem of drought as well as floods. In certain areas which did not receive the rainfall at the right time, the sowing was delayed. Whereas in many parts of the country, when the rainfall was very heavy, abnormal, we had serious flooding problem, as we can see in Maharashtra and Karnataka. So and this is why we have this this phenomena of drought and floods coming together and affecting almost simultaneously one after another. Then we also look at it in terms of the states. Many states were known as drought prone: Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. These were known to be the drought prone states. Many areas were in the rain shadow area, and they would receive very, very minimal rainfall. So they would experience drought frequently. But now many other states now have joined the rank of these drought prone states, and Bihar, which would not experience drought very frequently, now has almost annual frequency of droughts. So Jharkhand, Bihar, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Uttar Pradesh, they are experiencing droughts almost on a regular basis. Now, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, these two states, they have two monsoon, southwest and northeast, and still these two states do experience droughts. Punjab and Haryana had assured rainfall, assured irrigation, but the overexploitation of groundwater actually has posed serious problems about the availability of water. And you can see the distress creeping in these states as well. So we can see how the impact of drought can be seen across the states. Now, what is happening is that the drought, despite its nationwide impact, could also has the risk of becoming little more invisible. As I mentioned, the agricultural production is increasing, and actually we have we do not really experience the food shortages that we used to experience in 1950s and 60s and 70s. The governments also manage food inflation quite well through this monopoly procurement scheme, public distribution scheme, and imports. So we are not really facing the kind of food shortages and the food inflation we used to face in 30, 40 years back. The agriculture contributes just about 16-17% to the GDP. So the kind of impact it used to make, the droughts used to make early on, we are not seeing those impacts at the national level, at the macro level. But at the micro level, at the community level, at the level of districts and blocks and villages, we find that there are serious impacts. So just because we do not have the kind of national impact, it still has some impact, because if we have a weak monsoon, you would find that the demands falter. The slackening of rural demand does have an impact on the national growth rate, but it's certainly not to the same extent as it was in 60s, 70s, and 80s. Largely because the agriculture's contribution to the GDP has gone down. So we find that the drought is making a very serious impact at the micro level, at the level of village, communities, blocks, districts. And so it's very much possible that the impacts of drought we are not very visible when we have a very stable level of agricultural production and stable food prices. So that's why it's far more important that we have very good monitoring mechanisms, we have very efficient warning systems, and we have very dependable interventions which really help the people. So as the drought makes its impact very severe at the local level, what are the consequences that flow from that? One, we see people sliding below the poverty line in all those areas. The drought and poverty has a very strong relationship. In all these states, if you see where the rainfall deficit is very high, the incidence of poverty is much higher compared to those districts, those regions where the rainfall is much higher. If you just look at Maharashtra and compare the two parts of Maharashtra where the rainfall is higher, and compare it to those areas where the rainfall is much lower, you would find that the poverty in the lower rainfall areas, in the deficit rainfall area, is much higher. And so drought and poverty go together. And so if we have to alleviate mass poverty, we need to address the issue of drought. And that is why the issue of community resilience is very important. How do we organize interventions at the community level which really improve the agrarian practices, which help the people manage the impact of drought much better, and which really helps them become more diversified in their livelihoods practices. Now, when we see the impact, they get manifested at different levels, and the most important manifestation is the increase in indebtedness. How the people start getting more and more loans, and they get into the debt trap. And as we know, a large number of farmer suicides are very much explained in terms of rising level of indebtedness. They also get manifested in distressed sell of assets, land, livestock. People are selling it off. Then they migrate to cities, and the cities get more and more pressurized. And out migration also has a serious impact on the size and the structure of the family in the rural areas. Families get divided, women get left behind. We also see the decline in the food security at the household level. We have serious nutritional impact at the household level. There is serious water stress, which has also enormous health consequences. And then the access to education and health also get impacted. So there are a huge level of micro level consequences where the families and communities get affected in terms of the basic entitlements: access to food, water, access to education and health, and then all kinds of coping mechanisms follow from that, and those coping mechanisms actually lead to the decline in their well-being. The state governments and the national governments they step in, but the real problem here is that there is always a time lag between the incidence of drought and the time when the interventions are implemented. The drought is a slow onset disaster. It's a creeping disaster. It takes time before it is recognized. It's declared. There are all kinds of bureaucratic formalities that need to be followed. So the interventions invariably do get delayed. And it has a serious impact on the well-being of the households. People lose their crops, they lose their purchasing power, there is a decline in rural demand. So there is a certain level of rural distress that prevails for a long time before the states start intervening. And that is why it's very important that we recognize the drought-like situation much early and organize the interventions as quickly as possible. Now, if we look at the relief interventions, now what the MNREGS has emerged as the most important relief intervention. And then we have the public distribution system through which the food is organized, food is distributed. We also provide water through water tankers. We organize cattle camps or fodder depots. So these are some of the important interventions. They ensure entitlements. The people join NREGS on a large scale, and they get their wages, and all these wages and the food through the PDS, they protect their basic entitlements, and that's very good. But they do not lead to any surplus on part of the households. They just help them cope with the drought. They help them survive the drought. So it's basically a coping mechanism. They do not really contribute to long-term resilience. So what is very important is that we need to go beyond these measures. These measures are very, very important. And these measures, again, they need to be improved in terms of delivery. But we also need to go beyond these relief interventions, and we need to focus on those things which really contribute to the household level resilience, community resilience. Right now, we have a few interventions in the government sector which improve the resilience. One is the integrated watershed management program. We also have Westland Development Program. We have Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. We have Fasal Bima Yojana. All these are very, very important interventions which improve the resource level, which improve the water level, which gives some cash also in the hands of the people. So these are important interventions, but again, they are delivered at a broader level. I think it's time to focus more on the households. And so we need to look at how the households who are really distressed, they need to be helped. So what are the things that we need to do in order to help the households? I mean, one is that we need to look at the cropping system at the village level. We need to provide these seeds. We need to improve the farming practices, low input farming. We need to also recommend the participatory groundwater management. Commons need to be regenerated. We need to improve the livestock management. Access to markets also need to be improved. And finally, the rain-fed farming by itself is not viable. So the livelihoods need to be diversified. So basically, we need to promote a series of interventions which deliver assistance to the farmers at the disaggregated level. So our drought management programs need to bring these things together along with all the watershed management programs and wasteland development programs. Unless we focus more on the households, it would be very difficult to make the communities and the farmers more resilient. So we need to have long-term drought mitigation programs at the micro level, where we focus on the area-specific farming systems, where we bring improvements in surface and groundwater management. We improve the efficiency of water use. And we also look at the agroforestry. How do we improve? How do we use more and more solar energy, and become less energy intensive? So these are some of the important interventions that are needed. Now, recently, the Finance Commission has given its recommendations. And among the recommendations, it has suggested that at least 12 estates which are most affected by the drought, they should prepare the drought management plans. And where they bring together all these things, and they have allocated 1,200 crores. These 12 states are Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Gujarat, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, and Uttar Pradesh. So basically, what the FC has recommended, that we have so many interventions for drought. They need to be brought together. They need to be integrated, but we should develop a drought management plan at the district level. And for that, they have given 100 crores to each of these states just for preparing the plans, just for bringing all these interventions together. What is very important is that the farmers should be at the heart of these interventions, that all the interventions need to be delivered in a way that farmers really gain from them. They diversify their livelihoods, they improve the quality of their assets, and they really pursue financial inclusion, in the sense that they have more access to credit, they can get more insurance coverage, and they can use they should also be able to save their some of their earnings. So all these measures are very much needed to improve the community resilience. So I would suggest that following the Finance Commission recommendations, we need to prepare the plans at the district level so that we really bring together large number of schemes and deliver them in a more integrated way. So this is all that I would like to say here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vatsa. It was really a kind of a very, very insightful deliberations in terms of how drought could be managed and how different recommendations for underlying risks which have been identified in the context of poverty. And you also mentioned that poverty and drought management can go together. If you wish to eradicate poverty, we need to focus on the drought management. And this is a fundamental that how we should plan our interventions. And you mentioned about the 1,200 crore allocations of Finance Commission, especially given for the allocated for the drought management for several states. And in this context, the various programs which have been given are going on as a Manrega is a big hit for the livelihood, and also other program for DPAP and other mitigation program which are going on. But especially you highlighted in the context of ASDG that food security is a major issue when it comes to, despite of that agricultural growth is there, we have a high foods kind of a production, but the contradictory kind of a thing is coming in the situation at the ground is that we are also having high poverty, high food insecurity, and high level of poverty and indebtedness. So this is an insightful kind of initiatives that how that many of the things have not still written in the national guidelines of the but many things are to be added in that in the contemporary kind of issues, and also that how that national disaster authorities guideline for drought management can be translated by taking care of these issues which you have also flagged today. And one of the important components which you said in terms of the drought management plan and insurance as a kind of a new emerging need as a kind of a in the drought management scenario. I would extend my heartfelt thanks to you for being with us and giving this inaugural address and bringing all those issues which are very, very pertinent when we talk about the, whether we talk about the Sendai framework or other initiatives, but at the ground, what are the things which are needed to be taken care of? Very well narrated and very well highlighted. So I will take up these points which you have flagged into the other resource persons, especially you mentioned about drought monitoring. And drought monitoring is one of the most important things. Major General Bindal also flagged that as a monitoring and database system. And how at the local level this capacity is built. And that capacity is built and drought is actually declared. This is the only disaster in the country which gets declared. There's no disaster which gets declared. So I would request V.S. Prakash, Dr. V.S. Prakash, you have struggled a lot while settling down with the Drought Monitoring Center as the first state in the Karnataka, in the region, even I can say, in the Southeast Asia and South Asia. So I would request what Dr. Vatsa has said, and in terms of drought monitoring, for any drought management monitoring is the most important thing. And at the community level, how that community will get those information, whatever the scientific community they are bringing as a product, whether those products are easily understandable to the community, or is it too complex to understand and translate for the pragmatic engagement of the community. So thank you, Dr. Vatsa, and I don't know whether you will be staying. If you are staying, we would be grateful. Whenever you get time, we'll have some question answer later part of these deliberations. And if you find time, you can again rejoin also. But you feel free when, because I know your engagement in this way. So I extend my heartfelt thanks on behalf of NIDM for being with us and giving this very, very important deliberations and having agreed with part of this. So now I would request Dr. Prakash to come up with your key points in terms of the challenges if any states begin to settle or start settling up of or setting up of the drought monitoring center.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Santosh. I'm audible?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And it's indeed great opportunity for me to listen to the fellow speakers and Major General Bindal sir, Dr. Krishna Vatsa sir, and of course my dear friend, close friend for a long time, Professor Santosh, my co-speakers, Madam Nasim Sheikh, Madam Ranjana Chaudhary, Akash Sondi, and my dear friend Mr. Ali Haider. So it is a great, I think it is a privilege and pleasure to share a few thoughts. When you talk about resilience, especially in case of drought, I think Professor, Major General Bindal Saab and Krishna Vatsa Saab has made it very clear what drought is and how complex it is and what is the process involved and what is the things going on in the field, what is planned. And Dr. Krishna Vatsa rightly pointed out, it is more at a micro level. Whatever we are talking about, resilience, adaptation, monitoring, very, very clearly, he said that, well, at a micro level, it means a lot. Certainly at a macro level, it is an issue. And well, I would like to share few slides because time given is very, very little. And Professor Santosh has given a huge responsibility and to deliver through something justice, I will try to do that. And I will share my slides. Can I share my slide, please?
So you can share. I have given you the right to share. There's a button below, share. So you just click on that.
Oh. Is it visible?
Not yet, sir.
Now?
Invisible.
Hello? Is it visible?
Not,
Yes.
no,
Not yet, sir. Please do it again, sir.
Why don't you do this, Ali? You take the Ajay.
Yes, sir.
PPT
You
is
can
not
mail
there.
it to me and I can share on your behalf.
Suggest if he's sending, in the meanwhile, you can invite Naseem and then we can request Dr. Prakash because PowerPoint present. Acha, aa gaya. It has come now.
It has come now. Yeah, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Now it is visible. You can do it in the slideshow mode.
Yeah. Yeah. It is some pictures of what drought really brings before us. I've given some pictures, drinking water supply, crops withering, horticulture crops, agriculture crops, and wells going dry, and drinking water scarcity, all those things really comes before us. And what is required is, a continuous process, a continuous. I've shown the picture of family, and well, you need to really continuously be on the job and in a very meaningful way. The monitoring is the backbone of the entire process, When we talk about resilience, it is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, bring back to shape, improve in adaptation capability, and it helps in understanding and risk vulnerability. Because unless we do monitoring, we need to understand risk and vulnerability. Resilience is response to risk steering at community. Risk is steering at community, and resilience is a response to the risk steering at the community, and it heavily depends on the monitoring. The monitoring really ignites the response system among the community. Just give two examples. Well, for a long time, for 16 years, I was in the drought monitoring system in Karnataka state, and we just put up a monitoring system, and also it is a push and pull, a system where we used to provide the information to farmers and also push the information from pull the information from farmers also. So in that process, established a 24/7 help desk. So I getting a call one day, a farmer from Hassan asking me, "Sir, is it going to rain in another 2-3 days?" Well, I said, "Why do you need the information? Do you have an irrigation facility?" "Yes, sir, I've got the irrigation facility. But why are you worried about the rain or no rain?" "Sir, I have to pump the water from the nearby Nala, which is about 300, 400 feet away, and I have to use my diesel generator set, and I have to do it in the night time, and it saves labor and things like that. So if it is going to rain in 2-3 days, I will stop irrigating it." So another example is, another farmer from Yadgir. He calls me and was asking me same thing, whether it's going to rain. I said, "You have got the canal water. Why are you worried about rain?" So he said, "Sir, it's going to, if it's going to rain in another 2-3 days, and if we irrigate today, tomorrow, and if it's going to rain in 3-4 days, I will have a problem of pest and insect. If the pest and insect, I have to spray pesticide, insecticide, which costs me money, And in spite of using pesticide, insecticide, my yield, productivity will be very low, much lower than. So if it's going to rain, I will not irrigate today to tomorrow, whatever it is after what is going to rain. And that way I can save money on insecticide, pesticide, and also I can have better production and productivity. So what I mean to say is, these are the resilient, these are the adaptation technology. We speak about the water harvesting, things like that. At the micro level, these things do matter, conserving water and in the irrigation schedule, even in the borewell water. If it's going to rain, if the farmers, there are farmers, my friends, some of them are participating in the webinar. In fact, the NIDM told me I can share. So some of my farmer friends, they are participating in the webinar. They are using the information. They have put up a rain gauge in their own field. It's called Mera Barish Abhiyan, My Rain Abhiyan. Later, I have started this My Rain Abhiyan. So they say they've saved 30 to 40% of groundwater. By no other means you can recharge groundwater by 30-40%. No, because I was in Central Groundwater Board, and but saving water, this monitoring and really providing information. What has happened, what is going to happen, both the things, where it is going to rain, where not is going to rain, where is going to be excess rain, things like that really matters a lot in managing the drought. And also when we say drought, at least here in Karnataka, in Kannada, they call it Vanabara, Hasibara. That means a dry drought and wet drought. Too much rain, people also call it as a drought, because the crops, they can't sustain. They call it a Hasibara, wet drought, dry drought. Well, when you want to address these issues, a lot of good monitoring system is required. Let me go to the next slide. So these some of the information have been given by Dr. Krishnavas and Bindal Saab. And well, when we talk about the drought, it is basically agroclimatic zones. The dry zones are the zones which are more vulnerable to drought. We have agroclimatic regions given by the Planning Commission, National Agriculture Research Project, and also National Bureau of Soil Survey and Land Use. We have different maps. The way they were classified, the area is different. Agroclimatic zones. Okay. So drought monitoring and water governance is one thing very, very important when it comes to drought management. More people, more money, more water demand. People are going for commercial crops. All the less water intensive crops are slowly vanishing. More and more highly water demanding crops are much more wide. Water budgeting is need to be done not at a regional scale, at a micro watershed scale, even at the farm land parcel level. At individual farmers' land, at their scale, water budgeting is needed right now for the people to understand what they can do. When I say drought monitoring, it is the rainfall, it is the soil moisture, runoff, evaporation, evapotranspiration, all these things, monitoring it, having an idea about it, gives me an idea about the severity of drought or how to respond and adapt myself to the situation. But mostly, And if I'm wrong, I stand corrected, but I do share my experiences and my thoughts. Most of these parameters are assessed empirically. It's scanty measurement, no knowledge at all. Things which are not measured properly cannot be managed also, cannot be managed properly. Now, let me share some of my experiences. Probably when we talk about the hydrological system, because it is something related to water, as earlier speakers were talking about. Unless we know what is going around me, what is happening around me, the rainfall, the evaporation, storage in the surface water bodies, interception, soil water, evapotranspiration, runoff, infiltration, percolation, evapotranspiration, the people call the green water, blue water, all these things, and some knowledge is required. This is one example I'm giving, the two agencies, one is the national agency, another is state agency. In Karnataka case, NDMC, and particular period, the way things have been represented. One, the thing says the green color, everything is normal. Whereas in Karnataka, you can see very deficit rain, largely deficit, many areas. Probably it is a monitoring system which gives you this idea about either if it is okay, where is the response system? Hey, everything is okay, fine, no problem. Response system may not get ignited. But if the monitoring system says there is a problem, the response system gets activated. So to that extent, I don't I mean it is self-explanatory. So we have put up, rain gauges in all the gram panchayats of about 6,000 and odd gram panchayats are there. All the gram panchayats rain gauges are there, and we have something about 800 hoblies. It's called Firka Mandal. So we have got weather station in all the Firkas mandals, numbering about 800. The real-time data comes through is a tipping bucket rain gauge. The real-time data of the rainfall and weather parameters comes through GPRS to central server. Central server processes it, and the spatial and attribute data, everything, it gets generated automatically without human intervention. Goes back to all the users, right from the administrators to the community on near real time within 2 minutes, within 2 or 3 minutes. It goes back. If it is high intensity rainfall, the alert goes to all the concerned within a couple of minutes. Well, 98 from the government of India, I went to government of Karnataka on deputation. I went there with the dream of putting up a system, monitoring system, which is going to be very useful, very helpful to manage the things, many things, especially the surface water, including surface water management, agriculture, horticulture, all that. Primarily, is the weather. So we were able to start it, and at that time, as I said, we need to have a monitoring system at every gram panchayat level. There were many people who said, no, we don't need it. World Meteorological Organization says that one rain gauge for 350 square kilometers is enough. Why do you need a rain gauge for every 30 square kilometers? 10-fold increase, more than that. So it took some time, and without really taking any money from the government, installed one rain gauge in every district headquarters at that time. There were 27 districts at that time. Without taking a single rupee from the government, installed 27 rain gauges in 27 district headquarters. Because I was like a salesman, I was running around somewhere to deliver the service, save the money, and use the money because it was autonomous body. I had the support of all my chief secretary, development commission, principal secretary, they all supported me. We could able to really do it on a pilot basis, demonstrate it 9 o'clock sharp every day, right from the CM office down to the Tahsildar or Assistant Director Agriculture, Horticulture. The data goes in the mobile, 9 o'clock. They saw it for a month, 2-3 months. They developed confidence, and then there was no looking back. So here, left side is a Karnataka state. If you see Mysore district, it is in one green color. But when I go to zoom it, when I go to the Mysore district taluk wise, you see the green and blue color. And this, when I go to the Hunsur taluk, this is a distribution map. Resolution, you can see the resolution. Part of the Hunsur taluk, it is not rain, very negligible rain, and moderate rain and heavy rain. Probably the village boundaries are also given in the background. So this is what we can do. So here I have example I've given you. 1st to 28 July. That is today is 29th. Yesterday is 28th. 1st to 28 July. What is the rainfall pattern? I have one picture which is given by the IMD. The second picture from the KSN DMC, the district by same figure. Third is the mandal level, Hobley level, mandal, firka, things like that. What is right side, the mandal, Hobley, red spots is not seen in the central one and is hardly seen in the first one. So Dr. Krishnavasa was talking about is more at the micro level. What the right side, where the Hobley level do make sense to me when it comes to the this resilience, adaptation, response, and things like that. And I have just given some information in the bottom where you can see here, for example, here you can see this is the Bijapur district. So the green color, which says it is normal rainfall, whereas Karnataka State Natural Disaster Monitoring Center, based on the information gathered, data gathered, it is excess rainfall. So similarly, you see here, the Kodagu, the IMD says it is normal, but the case in DMC with high dense monitoring network is a deficit rainfall. So all the stars here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The 11 district, you see the color changes, the rainfall inference. What is normal becomes excess here. And say, for example, here, Ramnagara. Ramnagara, it says normal, but here it is excess rainfall. So probably what I mean to say is here, as per the the regional broad monitoring system, it is now you can I have given the normal excess, large excess. LEM is a large excess. So IMD says it is 13 districts, excess 4 districts, and normal 11 districts. Whereas KSN says it is 15 districts, excessive 6 districts, normal 9 districts, deficit 1 district. Again, normal do indicate minus 90 to plus 90. We all know that. But when you go to Hobley level, 60 Hobleys, they are deficit, and 1 Hobley is largely deficit. Now here, there is the community expects us to really go to that level and even address the issues at the Hobley level, not only Hobley level, at individual land parcel level. That is their expectations have gone up like anything for the past two decades. So what I mean is nothing like one is wrong, another is right. I just presenting before you how important is monitoring, the density of monitoring network, and how reliable it is, and how we can gain the confidence of the community. If you don't gain the confidence of community will not listen to us. Community certainly will not listen to us. So monitoring system, I given the example here. For example, another thing is, Karnataka earlier there were 27 districts. Now, long time back, is almost 3-4 years back, 4 more districts were carved out: Kolar, Chikballapur, Vijayanagara, and so these 3 districts, we find it missing in the IMD report even today. Even this is a Kolar, Chikballapura. What is given? What is the rainfall data for Chitradurga? It is repeated here, and Vijayanagara is not shown at all. Here, this is undivided Kolar. Now it is divided to Kolar and Chikballapur, but it still continued to be shown as one district. You can see here, Kolar, Chikballapur, these 2. And here you can see the Vijayanagara, new district, which is not shown. Because why? Something, we need to talk to each other. Probably this should be a common language for us to understand it. So here, the monitoring system in Karnataka, you can see here a small, a village, part of the village is receiving very heavy rainfall can be mapped. You can see here in the picture, the more than 65 millimeter per hour intensity of rainfall can be measured and it can be mapped. So that is the resolution at which the monitoring system is working in Karnataka system. So another example here I've given you that the dates, the week dates are given on the top, and you can see the black color figure is the normal rainfall by the state government. This is the KSN DMC. The red color is the values by the IMD. For example, Bangalore urban, see for example, the first top one, left one, here, Bangalore urban 25.8 is a normal rainfall by KSNDMC and IMD says is 25.9 and actual is 42 millimeter by KSNDMC and 81.3 by IMD. And when we take a departure from normal, it is 63% as per KSNDMC, but 214% as per IMD. Similarly, you can see Ramnagar here. So as per the data given by KSNDMT, it is 38% more than normal, but whereas IMD says is 32% below normal, minus 32 plus 38. So one says it is excess, another says it is deficit. Really, it is high time we need to reconcile all these things. Probably here you can see the second one. The one says minus 19, another is minus 38, and here is minus 50. Third column, you can see here minus 50, minus 16. Minus 16 is normal. Minus 50 is deficit. So you can see here, even today, this is the 22nd to 28th July, the week which ended yesterday. You can see the Bangalore urban. The Bangalore urban KSNDMC 25 millimeter is the normal rainfall. The IMD 25.7. Actual rainfall KSNDMC 25 and IMD says 33.1. And departure is 0 as per KSNDMC. As per IMD it is 29% excess rainfall. Bangalore rural it is minus 11 as per KSNDMC. 43 excess rainfall as per IMD. Ramnagar is 8% normal as per KSNDMC, and IMD says it is 69%. So a normal becomes largely deficit. 69 is large deficit. So one particular district level, when the monitoring systems here at regional scale, at a local scale, if one data set says it is normal, another data set is largely deficit, where do we stand? But why we are not talking to each other? Why we are not reconciling? Why we are holding on to our own fort? No, we need to really talk to each other. And well, this table, which I have given you here, the same 22nd July to 28th July, I have given large excess, normal, deficit, and no rainfall, large deficit, things like that. District-wise, taluk-wise, Hubli level, as monitored by KSNDMC. As on now, last week, there were 471 Firkas Mandal Hublis where the rainfall was large excess to normal, whereas 379 mandals, they were deficit to no rain. So when we take the percentage, 55% of the Hublis, large excess to normal, 45% of the Hublis in the state was deficit to no rain. But the state is classified under excess category. It's something like 34-40% excess. So where do we stand? Probably we need to really have a common language in monitoring and describing and the situation, prevailing situation. So we have a system, and a few months back, Kannada government came out with the water policy. There was a task force constituted. I was a member of the task force committee to draft the water policy for Karnataka state, and where we know it was agreed by the committee. I just proposed, and the committee has accepted it, that whatever system we have, a 6,000 telemeter rain gauges, we need to increase it to nearly another 20,000, because if we have 28,000, 26,000, 27,000 revenue villages in Karnataka, every revenue village, plan is to have a telemeter rain gauge. Another 20,000 sensors. The committee has suggested, recommended, and another 5,000 telemetric weather stations, 14 Doppler weather radars, and soil moisture measurement. Right now it is scanty, is more of inference made by satellite imagery and things like that. Now we propose to have one sensor every 10 square kilometer. So propose to install another 10,000 sensors. Proper transpiration is right now it is more of empirical, based on about 30 or 10 perimeters spread around Karnataka. 30. Areas 2 lakhs per kilometer. With that, you interpolate, extrapolate, things like that. Now it is proposed to have.
Dr. Prakash, can you Can you in 2 minutes wind up your
Yeah,
presentation?
I finished. Yeah, no problem. You need to have a data analytics, and data sharing, data analytics, collaboration, convergence, co-acting is required, and that only can help us in building community resilience. Probably we need to bring equity and equality, not somebody who cannot see what is happening the other side of the. So, and we need to know whose pulse we are monitoring. Otherwise, I think I was asked to start 6 minutes late, and I was asked to stop maybe a little early. Thank you very much. Sorry for exceeding my time by a few minutes.
No, not at all. Thank you very much. This was the science of drought monitoring as it was highlighted. And if any state is willing to take up, many of the countries are also looking into it, that how this we can be taking it to other country, and they in their countries and all they can set up. But the challenge which you are flagging it of the maintenance and also that census density, and the three set of data and 3 agencies, 3 set of data. This is very interesting insight which you have brought in, and how that can be collated and given as a kind of a correct information to the community. So these discrepancies are very, very important when we are talking about declaring of drought. And see that I thank you very much, and you stay with us because questions are coming. But I will take up at the local level. How, Naseem, are you there? And then we will move on to the scientific analysis as innovations by the Terry Institute of Advanced Studies. But before that, Madam Naseem is there, and she would be talking about that how at the local level हमारा ये कैसे ड्राउट को समझ रहे हैं और उन्होंने कम्युनिटी ने किस तरह से इनिशिएटिव लिया है. तो नसीम जी आप हैं हमारे साथ?
जी सर.
जी आप अपना जरा वीडियो दर्शन भी कराएं. थैंक यू. और उसके बाद थैंक यू. और अब अपनी बात कहना शुरू करें. जी, आपने सुना है हमारे चारों लोगों को?
बिल्कुल सर, बिल्कुल सुना है मैंने.
अपना बताएं.
अभी तक जिन्होंने भी बात किया वो सारे एक्सपर्ट लोग हैं और इस इशू के डीपन स्टडी करके उन्होंने अपने एक्सपीरियंस को शेयर किया है. और मेरा नाम नसीम है, सबको नमस्ते. और मैं स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग इस संस्था से जुड़ी हूँ और पिछले 25 सालों में मैं जिस एरिया में काम कर रही हूँ उस एरिया का नाम है महाराष्ट्र का मराठवाड़ा रीजन से मैं काम करती हूँ. और मराठवाड़ा रीजन की पूरे दुनिया में जो पहचान बनी थी वो लातूर अर्थक्वेक से थी. और उसके बाद जो सबसे बड़ी पहचान हुई ड्राउट के दरमियान, जब रेल से पानी चला लातूर तक, तो उसमें एक पहचान बनी. तो उस रीजन से मैं बिलोंग करती हूँ और मैं वहां पे स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग के संस्था के साथ जुड़ के काम कर रही हूँ. तो जहां तक आप सभी लोगों ने ड्राउट के अलग अलग सिचुएशंस को, उसकी सिवियरिटी को, उसके इम्पैक्ट को और उसके ऊपर काम करने के टेक्निकल तरीके, कम्युनिटी लेड अप्रोचेस, सबके बारे में अपने सबने बात किया है. लेकिन मैं जो बात करने जा रही हूँ वो बहुत ही लोकल कम्युनिटी लेवल पे और ग्रास रूट लेवल पे जिनके ऊपर ये इम्पैक्ट का ड्राउट का इम्पैक्ट हुआ है, मैं उनके साथ मिलके जिस तरह से काम हुआ है उसके बारे में बता रही हूँ. कि एक्चुअली स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग, सर मुझे शेयर हाँ स्क्रीन शेयर हो रहा है मेरा?
यस मैम.
स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग ये संस्था 1993 से इस रीजन में काम कर रहे हैं, मराठवाड़ा रीजन में. और मेनली हमारा जो काम है विमेन्स एम्पावरमेंट है टू लीड चेंज. तो महिलाओं को सक्षम करके उनकी कम्युनिटी में उनको जो भी बदलाव है, जो भी परिस्थिति है उसमें बदलाव लाने के लिए उनको तैयार करना है. और जैसे हम बोल रहे DRR में लोगों को DRR के साथ लड़ने के लिए तैयार करना है. तो अभी तक हमारा अलग अलग सेक्टर में हमने काम किया है, जैसे विमेन और एग्रीकल्चर, विमेन और वाटर एंड सैनिटेशन, विमेन और व्यवसाय या एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप जिसको हम बोलते हैं, और आज एसएसपी स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग ये संस्था पूरे 7 राज्य में अपना काम कर रही है। लेकिन ये सात ही राज्य जो अलग अलग आपदा से या अलग अलग डिजास्टर से जुड़े हुए हैं, जैसे बिहार फ्लड से अफेक्टेड है, महाराष्ट्र ड्राउट से अफेक्टेड है, और केरला अगेन फ्लड से है, इवन उड़ीसा साइक्लोन से। तो ये सारे डिजास्टर में कम्युनिटी किस तरह से आगे रहेगी अपने आपको तैयार करने के लिए, और अपने ऊपर जो परिस्थिति है उसको कम करने के लिए या खुद को रिजिलियंस बनाने के लिए कैसे काम करेगी, उसके ऊपर हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं। और अभी तक 2 लाख से ज्यादा महिलाएं इस नेटवर्क में जुड़ी है। तो जैसे मराठवाड़ा का बारे में अगर मैं बताऊं तो 2008 और 9 के बीच में ही स्लोली, जैसे सभी एक्सपर्ट्स ने बताया था कि ड्राउट एक ऐसी परिस्थिति है जो स्लोली शुरू होती है और फिर बाद में उसका बहुत बड़ा इम्पैक्ट हमको दिखाई देता है। तो मराठवाड़ा तरह से है जहाँ पे हमने देखा कि 2008 में ये शुरू हुआ, और जब शुरू हुआ तो हमने ये एक्सपीरियंस किया कि सब महिलाएं स्ट्रेसफुल है, उनके खाने पीने की परिस्थिति बहुत खराब है, और उनके पास उनके हस्बैंड्स के पास काम नहीं है, और धीरे धीरे ये परिस्थिति बहुत गंभीर होती गई। और 2014-15 में हमने एक्सपीरियंस किया कि मराठवाड़ा की फार्मर सुसाइड एक तरफ दुनिया में मतलब सबसे ज्यादा आगे आया, और दूसरी तरफ वाटर सिवेरिटी इतना था कि लोगों को पीने के लिए पानी ट्रेन से लाना पड़ा। तो इस रीजन के अंदर स्वयं शिक्षण प्रयोग महिलाओं के साथ मिलके एक मॉडल जिसको हम बोल रहे हैं कि क्लाइमेट वीमेन लेड क्लाइमेट रिजिलियंट फार्मिंग मॉडल, जिसके अंदर हमने अलग अलग कंपोनेंट्स को, जैसे सर बता रहे थे कि ड्राउट को एड्रेस करना मीन्स वी कैन इरेडिकेट द पावर्टी, तो हम पावर्टी को भी कम करेंगे, ड्राउट के इम्पैक्ट को भी कम करेंगे, और कम्युनिटी को ज्यादा से ज्यादा रिजिलियंस बनाने के लिए हमने ये 5 अलग अलग कंपोनेंट को एक साथ लाके काम करना शुरू किया था। जैसे सबसे पहले महिलाओं को केंद्र बिंदु बनाना, क्योंकि भारत सरकार मतलब भारत हमारा कृषि प्रधान देश है, और उसमें सबसे ज्यादा काम लाइक 80% काम एग्रीकल्चर का पूरे रूरल एरिया में है, और वो पूरा काम महिलाएं करती है। और आज भी उनकी पहचान एज ए फार्मर नहीं है, और उनको फार्मिंग एग्रीकल्चर के पूरा जो मेन स्ट्रीम है या मार्केट है या टेक्नोलॉजी है या फाइनेंस है, ये सबसे उनको दूर रखा गया है। जस्ट दे आर लिविंग एज ए लेबर। दूसरी तरफ जैसे कृष्णा सर ने भी बताया कि सबसे बड़ा जो इम्पैक्ट हमने देखा था कि विमेन की और गर्ल्स की फूड सिक्योरिटी के ऊपर, और उसके अंदर हमने शिफ्ट लेके काम किया। और तीसरी चीज, जैसे ही ड्राउट होता है तो बहुत सारे लाइवलीहुड के एक्टिविटी कम होते हैं, काम कम होता है और लोग माइग्रेट होना शुरू करते हैं। तो हमारे इस काम के या हमारे इस मॉडल के थ्रू हम किस तरह से गांव में या रूरल एरिया में लोगों के लिए लाइवलीहुड जनरेट करेंगे कि जिससे लोग माइग्रेट ना हो और अपनी उसी मतलब जो उनका जो एरिया है जैसे लातूर, बीड़ या उस्मानाबाद, उसी जगह रहे और शिफ्ट ना हो, माइग्रेट ना हो। और तीसरी चीज जो सबसे है कि जब ड्राउट होता है तो उसका सबसे बड़ा इम्पैक्ट पानी और सॉइल पे होता है, जमीन पे होता है। या और ड्राउट होने के जो रीजन है, जैसे जहाँ पे अफॉरेस्टेशन ज्यादा बढ़ रहा है या ट्रीज कट रहे हैं, तो वो सारे चीज, तो जैसे हमें उसमें नेचुरल रिसोर्स को हम कैसे बचाएंगे या उसका कैसे प्रोटेक्शन करेंगे, उसके ऊपर काम किया है। तो ये पूरे कंपोनेंट को लेके इस मॉडल में सबसे पहले हमने फूड सिक्योरिटी को ज्यादा लाइक विमेन सेंटर फूड सिक्योरिटी को एड्रेस किया कि महिलाएं कैसे एग्रीकल्चर में जब इन्वॉल्व होंगे तो वो एज ए लेबर रहे, एज ए प्लानर या एज ए डिसीजन मेकर करेंगे, और वो अपने क्रॉप्स को मैनेज करेंगे। क्रॉप को मैनेज करने के लिए सबसे पहले वो जो कैश क्रॉप है जिसकी वजह से हमारे फार्मर सुसाइड बढ़ गया था, कॉटन या शुगर केन, तो उसको डाइवर्सिफाइड करेंगे। और जो फूड क्रॉप्स है, वेजिटेबल खासकर जो बहुत ही वाटर इफिशिएंट होते हैं, रिपीटेड मतलब शॉर्ट साइकिल्स में आते हैं, तो उससे ड्राउट का इम्पैक्ट हम रिड्यूस कर सकते हैं। तो एक पूरा मॉडल है जो मैं आपके सामने रख रही हूँ कि जब पे हमने पूरी तरह एक फूड सिक्योरिटी के प्लान को कवर करने की कोशिश की, जिसमें सीरियल, पल्सेस, वेजिटेबल्स और ऑयल सीड्स की जरूरत है। लेकिन और इसके अलावा ये मॉडल के थ्रू हमने आज तक 1,50,000 फार्मर्स ने इसको अडॉप्ट किया है, विमेन फार्मर ने, और वो अपने तरीके से, इस तरीके से अपने घर के लिए फूड सिक्योरिटी कर रहे हैं, अपने डिसीजन से खेती कर रहे हैं, और साथ ही साथ जो ड्राउट का जो इम्पैक्ट है वाटर और लैंड के ऊपर, उसको भी कम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। और कॉस्ट ऑफ कल्टीवेशन, जैसे सभी एक्सपर्ट्स ने बताया था कि अगर हम लोग बायो या ऑर्गेनिक की तरफ जाते हैं तो हमारा धीरे धीरे ये जो क्लाइमेट चेंज है या ड्राउट है उसका इम्पैक्ट हम रिड्यूस कर सकते हैं। तो आज ये जो मॉडल है वो 1,50,000 महिलाएं प्रैक्टिस कर रही है। उनका लोकल सीड्स को जनरेट करके उसको एक सीड बैंक के स्वरूप दिया है कि जिससे ड्राउट की सिचुएशन में अगर उनको रिपीट भी सोइंग करने की जरूरत पड़ी या फिर नेक्स्ट ईयर के प्लानिंग के लिए वो हमेशा अपने सीड को सिक्योर करेंगे, अपने एक सीड बैंक का स्वरूप देके प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं। तो आज इस पूरे प्रोजेक्ट के अंदर इम्पैक्ट ये है कि छोटे फार्मर जो सिर्फ एक क्रॉप मतलब कैश क्रॉप में थे, आज वो 3 से 4 दो से 3 साइकिल्स कर रहे हैं, जैसे खरीफ और रबी के अलावा समर में भी कुछ शॉर्ट टर्म क्रॉप्स भी ले रहे हैं। और जैसे मैं बता रही थी कि फूड क्रॉप्स भी कर रहे हैं। इसके अलावा जब मार्जिनल फार्मर की हम बात करते हैं तो 1 या 2 एकड़ लैंड में उनका पूरा साल का जो हमारा साल का एक फैमिली बजट होता है या फैमिली का जो इकोनॉमिक रिक्वायरमेंट है वो फुलफिल नहीं होते, तो वो कैसे डाइवर्सिफाइड कर सकते हैं लाइवलीहुड एक्टिविटी को अलोंग विथ एग्रीकल्चर, जिसमें अलाइड है या फिर अलाइड एक्टिविटी को लेके। तो आज हमारे जो भी फार्मर्स हैं वो स्लोली अपना 1 लाख प्लस इनकम कर रहे हैं, जो कि हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर साहब का भी एक सपना है कि हम डबलिंग द इनकम, या हम बोल रहे हैं कि हम फार्मर्स की इनकम को डबल करेंगे। तो ये एक अच्छा प्रयास हमने देखा है कि हमारे फार्मर जो भी ट्रेनिंग या जो भी कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग उनको मिली है, या उनको एक जो विजन दिया गया है कि अगर हम ड्राउट रीजन में है तो हमको क्या करना चाहिए, हमारा क्या प्लानिंग होना चाहिए एग्रीकल्चर, लैंड और वाटर को लेके, तो और एनिमल्स के साथ। तो ये सारा एक करने के बाद जो फार्मर सक्सेसफुल अच्छी तरह से इसको प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं, उनके घर में 1 लाख प्लस इनकम है, और वो लोग वो उनका पूरी तरह से फूड सिक्योर्ड है। और मैं यहाँ देख रही हूँ कि हम धीरे धीरे अभी 60,000 प्लस एकर्स ऑफ लैंड को हम बायो फार्मिंग में कन्वर्ट कर चुके हैं। तो और दूसरी तरह जैसे सभी एक्सपर्ट्स ने बताया कि हमको वाटर मैनेजमेंट या वाटर को बहुत ही सही अच्छी तरीके से यूज करना है, उसको कंजर्व करना है या उसका मैनेजमेंट करना है। तो हमारे पास अभी धीरे धीरे किसान जो MRGS का जो पूरा प्रोग्राम है उसको एक्सेस करके गवर्नमेंट के साथ लिंकेजेस बना के हम लोग वाटर कंजर्वेशन के भी वेरियस मेथड, जैसे फार्म पॉन्ड है या ड्रिप इरिगेशन है, जो बड़े स्मॉल फार्मर है वो हम रेन पाइप भी यूज कर रहे हैं, लेकिन हमारा एक ही है कि वाटर को बहुत ही इफिशिएंटली हमको मैनेज करना है। तो ये इम्पैक्ट है। और हमारा ये पूरा जो मॉडल है उसको हमने SDG के साथ भी लिंक करके देखने की कोशिश की है, जो कि हमारा SDG 13 है सबसे बड़ा, जिसमें सॉइल और वाटर एंड लैंड की बात की जा रही है। तो और इसी SDG में हम लोग ड्राउट को भी एड्रेस कर रहे हैं। तो मुझे लगता है कि हम जेंडर के मतलब जेंडर इक्वालिटी की भी बात कर रहे हैं, फूड एंड सिक्योरिटी की भी बात कर रहे हैं, और सबसे जो हंगर और हमारा पॉवर्टी है। तो जहां तक हो सके हमारा जो छोटा प्रयास है या हम जिस तरह से फार्मर्स के साथ काम करें वो SDG को लिंक करके भी है। और मुझे लगता है कि हमारा जो छोटा काम है वो ग्लोबली भी कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है। और मैं अभी मेरे साथ गोदावरी डांगे है जो हमारी रियल हीरो है इस काम को करने की। मैं उनको आमंत्रित करती हूँ कि वो अपना अनुभव बताए कि ड्राउट में हमने किस तरह से इसको किया, क्योंकि क्या किया वो मैंने बताया, क्या हुआ वो मैं बताई, लेकिन कैसे किया, इस पूरे ड्राउट की सिचुएशन को हमने कैसे एक्सपीरियंस किया और फिर लोगों के साथ, ऑफिशियल्स के साथ उनको कैसे कन्विंस किया कि हमको रोल दो, क्योंकि महिलाएं हैं तो उनको कोई रोल नहीं देता है बड़े मेजर काम में। ड्राउट है तो ट्रैक्टर से पानी लेके आएंगे, लेकिन लोकल सॉल्यूशंस क्या आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे वो। तो मैं गोदावरी, आप हो, तो आपका अभी टाइम है, गोदावरी। गोदावरी,
Ma'am, has she connected from another device?
हाँ सर, हाँ वो दूसरी तरफ से कनेक्टेड है, मोबाइल से कनेक्टेड है वो।
Then I have to unmute her. Just a minute.
हाँ, गोदावरी डांगे या फिर दीपा नाम से होगी सर कनेक्टेड। हाँ गोदावरी आइडेंटिफाई नहीं हुआ, दीपा को जो कॉल करें।
And only after that, Dr. Akash.
सर आप आइडेंटिफाई,
I have unmuted her. She can speak now.
ओके ओके सर, थैंक यू। गोदावरी,
I think there is some problem from her side.
ओके गोदावरी,
Meanwhile,
you
Paul
just-
invites her.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Yes. Ma'am, you can conclude in 2 minutes. I have to invite the other panelists.
यस सर, ओके सर। म्यूट केले बोलतच नाही, केले नाही आपण, तुम्ही स्वतःच्या डिव्हाइस वर तेच।
Okay, ma'am, we can take her at the end of the session. Now, we can request Dr. Akash.
स्क्रीन नाही,
Are you with us, sir? Dr. Akash? Madam Ranjana Chaudhary, are you with us?
Yes, I'm there. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. So you can start your presentation, ma'am. I have given you the right.
Okay, so let me thank you. Let me just start my presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you given me the sharing rights? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I have given you the sharing rights. Or I can share you on your behalf.
Yeah, let me just see if I can share then. Can you see?
Yes, ma'am. Please.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, so I'm Ranjana Ray Chaudhary, and thank you very much, Mr. Ali and Professor Santosh Kumar. In fact, I had a wonderful listening session, listening to all the experts, Major General Winder, Dr. Krishnawats, Dr. Prakash, and of course at the end Naseem also. It was really wonderful to listen to all of them, all and into great learning. So, is there an echoing sound? Is somebody else is not on mute? Yeah, is it better now?
Ma'am, all are on mute. I think there is some issue from your device.
From my device? Oh my God. Is it better now?
And you can directly speak from the laptop.
Direct.
Now can you hear me better?
Yes, ma'am, it's better.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think I'll not spend much time on all these kinds of drought risk because I have heard the speakers before me about the agricultural drought, the hydrological drought. So we have spoken about the blue water, the green water. Dr. Prakash was speaking about it. So mostly what I would like to focus on is that droughts like extreme rainfall have an intensity and duration. So what is the intensity? What is the duration? The return period of a drought? Can we look at that? The spatial extent, what is the area over which we think that the drought will be spread? Then what are the trends, the historical trends and the future trends? Is it that between two drought events, is there a return period that is becoming shorter? What I'm trying to tell you is that instead of a drought which used to come back in 20 years or 50 years, is it going to come back in 15 years? These are things that we have to look at. The reason being that we are trying to understand the impact of climate change. So we know that a drought it is related to the climatological as well as the hydrological parameters. So when I say the climatological and the hydrological parameters, what we are talking about is essentially that there is this relationship between the hydrology and the climate, the meteorology. So once the dry hydrological conditions are able to set in, what really happens is that the moisture condition depletes in the upper layers, and that decreases the evapotranspiration, and that leads to less relative humidity in the atmosphere. When that kind of a situation occurs, where the relative humidity itself goes down, that is the time that there is a less probability of the rainfall. And then the saturation conditions in the atmosphere, which will lead to the rainfall, those reduce, and therefore the chances of rainfall reduces. So under such circumstances, what happens is that only when there are disturbances which carry enough moisture from outside the dry region will be able to produce sufficient rainfall to end the drought conditions. Now, this is something very important to understand climatologically, that there is a lot of heat, that is there a lot of rising temperature is going to lead to less moisture. And what we see in the last 140 years, what we see is that there is this climate change because of, you can see that there is a rise in the temperature. What we say that in the initial years till 1950, it was 0.35 degrees centigrade, and then it has been increasing at 0.5 degrees centigrade. So there is a rise in the temperature, the global temperature, and there is a rise, of course, also in the carbon dioxide levels. These are the easily measurable terms that we have been, through which we are measuring the climate change. And the moment that happens, there is an intensification of the global hydrological cycle. But all the eminent speakers before me have also stressed that at the larger scale, this is happening. But at the micro scale, it is the farmer who is suffering because of this kind of a change in the global hydrological cycle. So intensification of the cycle would mean intense precipitation, but that intense precipitation happens over a short period of time and over a small area, while the larger areas are getting lesser rainfall, and therefore it leads to more drought-like conditions. So what is really happening in case of climate change is there is an increase in the mean surface temperature. The mean global surface temperature is increasing. There are conditions of heat stress which are created. Of course, we know that heat stress only lasts for about 3 to 5 days, while the drought is a much longer thing. But there is definitely an impact on the crop because of the heat stress, and also because eventually because of the drought. There is this reduced soil moisture condition. There is also this chance of soil erosion and rising desertification, because in those areas where the drought drought is happening over a prolonged period of time, it is also leading, is it leading to desertification? If that be the case, then the moisture which is going to rise to the atmosphere, which ultimately leads to the rainfall, especially the convective precipitation, that is also going to lessen over time. And so the drought definitely impacts both the surface water and the groundwater resources. But till now, the impact of climate change on the drought characteristics fully explored. And we have been relying heavily, especially in peninsular India, on the groundwater resources, as Dr. Prakash was mentioning. So we have to talk in terms of conservation. So there is a new term now where people are talking in terms of groundwater drought. And in addition to that, we know that the water demand is increasing. We spoke about the agriculture production being quite good now, and food security is definitely a term which will be affected more. Food security will be affected more because of climate change, the power production, industrial use. So there is these competing demands for water, and under these competing demands for water, which already exist today, in times of climate change, the water, the amount of rainfall which will occur is going to be less. And if that is going to happen, then how are we looking at these competing water demands? So when we look at these all India summer monsoon rainfall, what we see when Dr. Krishna Vatsa was speaking, he said that, and of course when General Bindal was speaking, we were talking he was talking in terms of the severity of the drought having increased. So it is the severity of the drought, and is it that now onwards the return period of the drought will be shorter, in the sense that a severe drought used to have a return period of once in 20 years or 25 years. Is that going to get shorter because of the climate change, because of the global rise in temperature? That is what we have to understand, because the impact of those will be felt quite severely, and once again by the farmers. So what are these resilience measures that we will be looking at? Now, when I talk in terms of the impact of climate change and what is the how to reduce the risk, I of course fall back on the model of basic hydrology. And here what I am talking about is very basic philosophy of detention, retention, and infiltration. So we have to detain whatever water we have, and we have to try and retain it within the catchment, and there has to be this infiltration which has to be allowed, because it is the groundwater which is not subjected to evaporation, and it is this groundwater which we will use when the drought conditions also increase. So I have posed some questions about the agriculture return flow being used. We are doing irrigation, and so can we reuse the agriculture return flow in terms of recharging the groundwater? And of course, we are talking in terms of the water reuse, the recycling of water. I heard the speakers before me speak also in terms of water use efficiency. These are all things which have to be there in our state water policies. And these are, when we sit together, all of us, and then we see that all of these factors are going to lead us to having more groundwater, and that is going to be very important in these uncertain times ahead, when the climate change impact will be felt in larger geographical extent, is what I would like to say. Thank you very much for your patient.
Thank you,
Thank you.
I really didn't want it to be very long. So thank you.
No,
Over
no,
to
no.
you, Akash.
That was perfect. Thank you very much, Ranjana ji, for setting the sign, or rather, presenting the canvas from the science point of view. Ali, you may please give me the presentation rights.
Yes, sir. I have given you the right. You can share now.
Sure. I'm any moment. Okay, now it is visible.
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Thank you. So thank you, Ranjana ji, for setting, painting the canvas from the scientific point of view. I duly acknowledge Team NIDM, and I will again hold my detailed acknowledgements towards the end of my presentation. Drought occurred to me I joined Terry School of Advanced Studies in the Department of Energy and Environment in 2018. Drought as a phenomena occurred to me as a design thinking problem, and again, I take a step back. Climate change and climate change related droughts occurred to me as a design thinking problem, as a wicked design thinking problem. That means uncertainty, something which has an aspect, a very strong aspect of uncertainty, and also uncertainty in uncertainty. So as we know, India is a country with 800 million people dependent on agriculture and for subsistence farming as well as for their living. Yet only half of our farmlands have access to engineered irrigation. Uh, when we talk about annual monsoon rainfalls, it has been shared by eminent panelists that we get almost 80% of our monsoon rains in 4 months, and yet there is a very strong aspect of erraticity due to these natural weather systems, and these erraticity is increasing more and more due to climate change. Well, what is happening because of this erraticity is even more important, is that India with 1.4 billion people have to put food in the tables of everybody. I mean, the farmers grow it, but eventually there is a big consumer base who actually need that food to get on with their with their with their living. So now, because of these scenarios which are in front of us, and the drought and and the rural and the drought has linkages to food security, this becomes an even important problem to address. Just a second, my slide. Okay. I had a first-hand experience to work with two unique situations. One was in Rajasthan, and another one was in Jasdan, Gujarat. So this is a fuzzy cognitive map of one such situation where at Savai Madhavpur we wanted to reach out to we reached out to community at village level and at household level as to what happens. I mean, what was their own not perception but actual experience with droughts, and it led to it led to many such uneventful consequences leading to health, education, food insecurity, and also eventual out migration from these areas to urban areas. So they did pose a very long-term and existential threat to such community, which is actually one in every other person in India was impacted by such scenarios. So these two studies actually at Jasdan, Gujarat, and also at Rajasthan, Savai Madhavpur, Rajasthan, which are perennially, right, more like chronically that had experienced droughts at a chronic level. And two of my students, Miss Himani Malhotra and Miss Charvi Kapoor, worked on these projects to understand, what could be those strategies which can get these communities out of that vicious circle of going back to a very going back to not having their livelihoods and eventually out migrating from this region. So and drought as a factor, I mean, there are many factors which go beyond drought. uh, while drought is a physical phenomena, it's a natural phenomena, and also the way we interact with nature are many such aspects which leads to drought. But once a drought happens, it again leads to various other socio-economic infirmities in a region. The social fabric distorts, the institution breaks, the health, food, nutrition security is also compromised. But and also in the longer run, we see that the community loses when the very essence of community is lost. So we when we were working in Gujarat and Rajasthan, we understood these phenomena, and also these changes which come about because of drought also lead to more conditions of drought. For example, there is a lack of trust between the community when a region is affected by a very long term chronic drought, because now they don't trust each other. There are land disputes, there are other aspects. So I may even extend this definition of drought not just being a physical or a financial phenomena, but also is a human phenomena which actually exacerbates with time. We also looked at, drought is not just drought. Actually, we are seeing, as Professor Santosh pointed out in the early part of his inaugural and introductory talk, that how flood and drought are also related. We are seeing that regions which were earlier just, in the very recent very recent past were affected by drought are now experiencing floods. So, and why is that happening, and what is that overall, this flood drought cycle, which is so very important to understand. I Okay, when we looked at Jasdan and Gujarat, which was, the work supported and done by a team of Bharat India Jodo team of Reliance Foundation, we looked at those interventions from our own lenses. While they followed a participatory approach, but we went there with our critical lenses and tried to understand as to what they are doing, and if what they are doing makes sense, and what is the final outcome coming from those interventions. Based on our understanding of their efforts, which was understanding the situational awareness, and then acting on what is lacking in those regions by bringing the community together, we came with the KIISP: knowledge, infrastructure, institution, and a support system, and a participation based framework, which led to a long-term resilience, sustenance, and propagation of such initiatives in the proximate regions. So what, by way of understanding the work and the effort of the community, the drought is a problem at a very the drought is a problem at a local level, as has been emphasized by all the speakers here. And to be able to solve it, it can be solved by the community. External efforts can help to a certain extent, but until the community comes together and takes ownership of that situation, and they have the better answers and more long-term answers to these challenges. So what came out of the efforts of Reliance Foundation, and the work which was done there by way of community. Reliance Foundation was an enabler, but it was the community which did this. We as a team tried to understand, what drought means to a community, and also when things change, how it change. So a Sledger's framework, which is used for perception, to understand perception of an individual, perception of a community, gave us deeper insights into what is happening, what has happened, what is happening, and how the community see itself in times to come. By way of memory, experience, definition, by way of definition, experience, memory, and expectation, we got a sense of how these communities have changed and what is the final outcome. And so here, this pie chart, which is actually I want to refer to the left bottom pie chart, where we ask the community, and in respective by way of a survey, how many of them, after those interventions, how many of them they saw water as a limiting factor to what they want to do. And coincidentally and interestingly, after a period of 7 years, the community now see themselves as more empowered, and in terms of water. So 89% of the community said no, that water is no more a limiting factor of what they want to do. So, and this happened because of the several interventions, and which were bucketed under the KIISP framework. Resilience is not a matter of, like, Rome was not built in a day. Similarly, resilience is also not built in a day. These efforts of change, these efforts of community level resilience, which we saw, is an effort of almost 7 years, and that's it takes time. And the slower I would not say too slow, but slower the better, because it has to be incorporated in their way of life, in their culture. So as a result of efforts from 2013 to the recent efforts, we were working there until the first wave of pandemic, and we realized that these changes which have been brought about in Jasdan were rather more permanent in nature because of the organic evolution of such efforts. So what we got to see at the end of it was a community which is feeling more confident, not just about themselves but also about their future generation. They want their children to study, as the health outcomes are better, both by way of subsistence for their own self, and also for livelihood, like the market with going out to the market for the next level of the next journey which they follow. Also, out migration has been checked in this region, and another good observation which we had was that people are now returning back to these communities to again get back to their original source of livelihood. With that, I say a sincere thank you to Team NIDM, starting from Professor Santosh Kumar, Mr. Ali Haider, and also respected Major General Bindal, Professor Vatsa, Dr. Vatsa, Dr. Prakash, Naseem ji, and my own colleague, Ms. Ranjana Chaudhary. So that was all I have to share, or Terry School has to share on this context. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Ranjana and Dr. Akash, for showing the scientific perspective of the droughts and for the successful models which you have applied in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Savai Madhopur, Madhya Pradesh. Thank you for that. As we are already out of time and we have crossed our time, we just can take a few questions from the participants. Let us start with the question and answer session. So the first question is, what would be the role the panelists would suggest for the panchayats to mitigate the drought impacts on the community? So if Dr. Prakash would like to answer it.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What I would suggest is, I think other speakers have also emphasized it, and has to really involve themselves in, monitoring things around us, understanding the things, and what best suits them. Because instead of inviting suggestion advisors from people far away who don't understand their situation, severity, no, they should start monitoring, measuring, understanding it, and forward, backward linking, talk among themselves, and take some adequate measure. It is possible. I just quoted an example of Mera Barish Abhiyan, which I have started. So it's going on well. People are starting the groundwater portable health and take resilient measures. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the answer. The next question we have from the participant is that what could be the main agricultural practices to be taken under the drought conditions? Yes, Dr. Prakash.
Yeah, see, for example, drought, when the drought creeps in, I think one of our speaker, and I think she was Madam Naseem Sheikh, she was, she was just showing a diagram of mixer cropping. So here the risk is again divided. So in a particular situation, the break monsoon condition, maybe one or two crops may suffer, but at the same time, there is a chance of survival of other crops. So it is being propagated since long time to go for mixture cropping, but nowadays, by and large, it is all monocropping which prevails all around. We talk, but practice, doing and knowing and doing, there are two different things. We know, but prefer to do monocropping. Somehow it's a paradox, no? Probably we need to really, maybe piloting small plots, mixture cropping may be happening, but largely it is all monocropping. Have a insightful thinking. Say what another, yeah, and where do you stand? Where what is my risk, and how best I can manage, and for the governance, the intervention, how best way the interventions can be done is the responsibility of the government. Government need to understand the risk at different levels and provide the support, adequate support needed in time. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, Ms. Ranjana wants to add something to it.
No, thank you. I think sir was very good. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Dr. Akash, if you want to add something.
Ali ji, thank you for that question. I want to address the previous previous question about the role of panchayats and how can panchayats can play a role to. So first of all, I mean, the panchayats leadership, they have to show the leadership. They have to both be an enabler, facilitator, as well as a direction. Yeah. So as well as they have to pursue, as they call it, in pursuit of resilience. So my kind of answer to that is a panchayat and led by the sarpanch and led by the members of the panchayat has to just make a sincere effort towards taking ownership of their own systems. I mean, a quick example was my father was a water resource engineer, and his team, one of his team member said to me once that a lot of governments water structures are made in for the community. However, they get money to make those structures, build those structures, but about maintaining those structures. So for example, before the rain events, like this time of the year, late May and early June, they have to open the gates, because if you don't open the gate, that the very flood which is meant to if you don't maintain the gates or don't keep them open, these gates get rusted over. They will certainly stop the water, but the gates will get rusted over time, and then you cannot open them. And so I think that what the panchayats can do and the local community can do is to make the most of the infrastructure which the government has already built for them. And maintenance is 10%, but if that structure goes bad, to revive that structure again is another 90%. So I think that was my point to for the first question. And for the second question, Professor Prakash ji said a very good answer, taking what he said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So as we are already out of time, finally, I request Professor Santosh Kumar to please summarize the session and what are the key takeaways point from the session. Please tell us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ali, because my network is little problem. So this time I'm not opening my video, otherwise the voice will start breaking. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are perfectly audible.
Okay, so major things which comes with the drought management, the deliberations which have been made today. One that is that if India is thinking of poverty eradication as one of the key objectives of the goal, then first of all, we have to address the issue of drought. So the drought risk management is much more important than the disasters which are happening otherwise. So the integration of that one is important. The second point which came up is that livelihood diversification is very much important when it comes to the drought management and reduction of vulnerability of the exposed population. The third important thing which came as a kind of alternate source of energy, that is like solar energy and other things, so that carbon emission, because this is linked with the climate change and carbon emission. So that is also very much needed so that the problem of drought doesn't get aggravated further. So that is the third recommendations. The fourth recommendation is that how we should think of engagement of and empowering of community by empowering local governance, say panchayat. And also when we talk about urban drought is coming as a new phenomenon here as a kind of a concern. So that was the fourth recommendation of the day. The fifth recommendation is coming as a kind of a building community resilience should be linked with the food security and public well-being. So this is the fifth recommendation came up today. Sixth recommendation is the setting up a drought monitoring center in the states, and monitoring of the important, and it was also mentioned in the national guidelines. So how fast, how quick that support system could be generated. Maybe that institution like NIDM and Karnataka State and Terry Institute of Advanced Studies can think of taking this further. That management of that drought monitoring center itself is a big task, as that good model was given by the by Karnataka is the Rain Friend or something was mentioned that how Rain Friend and is a new initiative which has been brought as a participatory water management. Another major thing which came up as a kind of a science application of science with the two studies which were presented from the Terry School of Advanced Studies is talking about that without data, without advanced research, and without that kind of work, very difficult to manage. So how to bring innovation in the management of drought? That is, so promoting investment for the innovation is important for the drought management. The another I would like to highlight, which was missed out in the veterinary management during the drought. So veterinary was missed out, and many other points also got missed out because it's a multi-sectoral, and in one webinar it was not possible to figure it out. But that is much more important to bring on and making as a kind of a participatory engagement. The Naseem and the point made by Naseem that 80% of the job is done by the in agriculture sector by women, but women hardly get into the definition of farmers. Even if you see that today's farmers movement, everywhere poster I see in India is the farmer is the male farmers. So that has to be seen and how that women have been able to bring change in the at the local level. So that is very, very important. And so women leadership in the agriculture sector, in the insurance sector, in the micro insurance and others should be brought into a forefront for drought management. And we said that 11 million additional poor have been added this year. So that is another challenge when we talk about drought and the new states which have come up into the drought scenario. That should be looking into that Manrega, PDAs, DPAP, forestry management, all these programs comprehensively and kind of in an integrated manner. So all those are important. So there are many other recommendations also. I would request all the panelists if they feel certain recommendations to be added, which I'm not able to capture today. That should come into kind of recommendations because we will be discussing with the several state government. So I would be grateful to all the panelists if they can share by mail their recommendations. Whatever I have mentioned, that is one, but the additional ones which I have missed out. And I'm grateful to all the distinguished panelists, including Dr. Vatsa, who gave the very, very important inaugural address, and Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, V.S. Prakash from Karnataka, and bringing out that how drought monitoring is important and how he had carried out, and Rain Varsha example which he gave. I'm thankful to him. I'm thankful to Ranjana Chaudhary ji and Dr. Akash Ondi for bringing brilliant program point from academia point of view, innovations and research and technology, how that can help multiple kind of a cropping pattern, multiple seeding, and also and so forth. So all these, and then Naseem ji brought that whatever we are doing in the laboratory and lab to the people example was very classic. How women are transforming those issues. What Dr. Vatsa highlighted, indebtedness, issue of indebtedness. The agriculture farmers become indebted and then they commit suicide and then that distress. So that distress and migration can be taken care of. So all these points which are there, and groundwater management is another, surface water management is other, agriculture productivity and livelihood issues other, and then crop multiplication other. So there are hundreds of other examples to be brought in. But the major point which I picked up for this recommendation, and I would also suggest that please do that. One webinar is not good enough for tackling drought, but we will have a couple of more so that we can consolidate our thoughts, and we will discuss it. Also today's recommendations we will be discussing in the next webinar, and finding solution which is very pragmatic for the administrators who are dealing with drought on a day-to-day basis there in the field, and how they can actually help the community, those community who are taking initiatives, they can be supported by the government. So whether the role of local government, panchayat, or the community organization, civil society group, and so on and so forth. So thank you so much to all of you and being there, and grateful to all the participants who are still continuing and in the discussion and raise very, very valid questions. So I'm grateful to them, and NIDM extend heartfelt thanks to all the participants who are attending this webinar. I am thankful to all the delegates, and thankful to our colleague Ali Haider for bringing this as to floor. Thank you very much. Now over to you, Ali, for taking. Once again, I thank Dr. V.S. Prakash.
Thank you,
always,
thank you.
Insightful presentation. I'm really grateful that you could find time and share your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Santosh. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for summarizing the session and your concluding remarks. Thank you. So at the end of the session, I would like to present the formal vote of thanks for this webinar on community resilience to drought on behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management. I like to take this opportunity to place in record a hearty thank to the patron of this webinar, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management, for his support and guidance for the program. I would also like to thank the convener of this program, Professor Santosh Kumar, sir, Head GIDRR, National Institute of Disaster Management, for continuous motivation and support for the program. I wish to extend a sincere thanks to the Honorable Member of National Disaster Management Authority, Dr. Krishna Vatsa, for his inaugural address and for taking out the time for this program from his busy schedule. I would also like to thank to all the respected resource persons of this webinar. I wish to thank Dr. V.S. Prakash, Member Technical Committee, Karnataka State Tanks Conservation and Development, who deliberated on drought monitoring case study of Karnataka towards community resilience. I wish to thank Dr. Akash Sondhi and Ms. Ranjana Chaudhary, who are the faculties at Terry School of Advanced Studies. They address the questions: what are the implications of drought, risk, and climate change? How to overcome the challenges associated with drought risk reduction. I also wish to thank Ms. Naseem Sheikh, who is the Associate Director at Swam Shikshan Prayog, Maharashtra. She deliberated on drought and social vulnerability, gender poverty, food security, livelihood, migration, etc. I also wish to place on record a hearty thanks to all the participants connected with us from different parts of the country. I wish to thank to all the representatives of state and central governments who managed to take out their precious time for this program. With these words, I like to bring the end of this webinar on community resilience to drought. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we officially end the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.